On 3 January 2026, the United States launched a series of airstrikes on Venezuela and captured sitting President Nicolás Maduro, codenamed Operation Absolute Resolve. It began around 2 a.m. local time, when more than 150 United States Armed Forces aircrafts conducted airstrikes across northern Venezuela and in areas around the capital city of Caracas. President Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were captured by U.S. forces and flown to New York City. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that Maduro and Flores had been indicted in the U.S. Southern District of New York on several charges related to narco-terrorism, superseding a 2020 indictment based on similar charges. To understand why Venezuela matters to the United States, we need to look at several key factors. First, Venezuela has enormous energy resources. It holds some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Oil has been the backbone of the Venezuelan economy for decades. For the United States, stable access to energy resources and influence in energy markets has long been a strategic concern. The country's oil reserves and its location in the Caribbean make it significant in global energy decisions. The position of Venezuela in the Western Hemisphere matters to U.S. strategic interests. The United States has historically viewed the region immediately south of its borders as a zone of security and influence. A nation with deep ties to governments that are ideologically opposed to U.S. policies challenge that influence. Over many years, U.S. leaders have said that reducing instability, drug trafficking, and authoritarian practices in the region is part of their policy agenda. Venezuela's alliances also affect how the United States sees it. Caracas has developed economic and political links with countries that the United States views as competitors, including China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. These relationships tie Venezuela into broader global power dynamics beyond the Americas. The relationship between the United States and Venezuela has changed over time. For much of the 20th century, Venezuela was one of the world's major oil producers and maintained diplomatic and economic relations with the United States without major conflict. Things began to shift in the late 1990s and early 20s. Under President Hugo Chávez, who came to power in 1999, Venezuela pursued a path that emphasized national control over oil reserves and aligned with governments critical of U.S. foreign policy. Chávez nationalized parts of the oil industry and used oil revenues to support social programs and international alliances. This reduced the influence of foreign oil firms, including American companies. U.S. leaders expressed concern about these developments. Over the next 2 decades, tensions persisted. Sanctions began to impose on Venezuela. The U.S. government barred Venezuela government officials and companies from accessing U.S. financial markets, citing corruption, human rights abuses, and concerns about democratic process. These actions continue to expand under multiple U.S. administrations, particularly during the Trump presidency. By the early 2020s, Venezuela faced a serious economic crisis. With declining oil production, shortages of basic goods, and mass migration of Venezuelans in neighboring countries, the United States and its allies criticized the Venezuelan government, particularly under President Nicolás Maduro, for undermining democratic institutions. In late 2025 and early 2026, relations between the United States and Venezuela escalated sharply. The United States increased military and economic pressure on Venezuela, including sanctions on oil companies and tankers linked to the Venezuelan government. At the same time, Washington labeled Venezuelan leaders as involved in narco-terrorism, combining allegations of drug trafficking with state authority. This set the stage for U.S. military action. 2 a.m., 3 January 2026, U.S. forces conducted an operation that led to the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife. The United States justified the action by citing legal charges and national security concerns. Scale of the operation and detention of a sitting head of state tried strong international reactions. Many governments and international bodies expressed deep concern about the legality and precedent of foreign power capturing a president outside wartime conditions. The capture of President Maduro has had multiple consequences. In Venezuela itself, the situation has created tension and uncertainty. Supreme Court and Vice President named an interim leader, rejecting U.S. actions as a violation of sovereignty. In summary, Venezuela matters to the United States for its energy resources, strategic location, and the broader geopolitical competition that defines much of today's international relations. The recent intervention and capture of President Maduro reflect a culmination of long-standing tensions and involve economic interests, security concerns, and competing visions of governance. The consequences are significant at regional and global levels, and responses from other major powers underline the complexity of the situation. The future remains uncertain, but the events of this period will shape policy and relations for years to come.